Those long, hot summer days bring all kinds of unique pressures to rose gardens. We've done a video already called Summer Rose Cleanup, which is where we cleaned up a rose and kind of did some trimming on it. But there's some other things that I want to talk to you about too that you're probably kind of wondering about. What about watering, fertilizing, spraying? Do I keep going? Do I make adjustments? What can I do in order to best set my roses up for their fall bloom during the hot dog days of summer? As you can see, I've been doing a lot of trimming. After the drought of the last couple of years, we really took a good hit around here. Let's talk about fertilizing in the summer. The roses actually in the summer go a little bit dormant when it gets hot. The exception might be your teas and your chinas. Back off on the feeding a little bit. If you did your time release earlier in the year, you'll be fine. Organics, you'll be fine. But if you're doing supplemental feedings with liquids and stuff, give them a break. Let them kind of quiet down a little bit. Then watch for towards the end of the summer, right when fall's about to break. The nights turn cool, you start to get growth again. That's when you can come in with a little bit of fertilizer again. But this is important. When you get to that end of summer, early fall, only use short-term fertilizers. Don't use long-term fertilizers like time releases over several months. You don't want to be pushing tender young growth with nitrogen right before you're about to get a freeze in October, November, or December. So think short-term fertilizers only at the end of summer. What about spraying? Well, here's my thoughts on that. Just go ahead and continue your normal program. If you do spray, continue it during the summer. If you don't spray or use a light hand, which is what I tend to do, go ahead and continue that as well. Once you've done a summer cleanup, however, like we did in the summer cleanup video, you could come back with some lime and sulfur spray. And that's a real good way to kind of knock down any kind of disease that might be lingering in the summer. To do that, it's real simple. It's just called dormant lime and sulfur spray. Most good garden centers carry it. You can also get it online. You go ahead and mix about 1 tablespoon per gallon of water. Don't use a spreader or a sticker. That's very, very important, okay? I use a hose end sprayer, one of those dial hose end sprayers, you know what I'm talking about? Put it at the end of the hose, fill it up, wash the garden down on a cloudy day, kind of like I've got today. Wait about 20, 25 minutes, 30 minutes. Then I'll wash it off with the garden hose because that then takes all that sulfur and puts it down into the soil. Because sulfur is a contact eradicant. It kills black spot, powdery mildew, things like that on contact. Spray it on the plant. That'll kill the disease on the plant. Wash it off. Let it go down into the mulch. That'll kill the disease in the mulch. The other reason you want to clean it off the plants is to avoid burn. Because when the sun comes out, it will burn a lot of the old foliage. But then again, in the summertime, I don't mind so much seeing some of that old foliage go anyway. Mulch is incredibly important in the summertime because it keeps the root zone cool, keeps the plants moist, and just less stress on your roses. Now, one of the things you hear about with mulch all the time is what kind should I use? Should I use pine? Should I use hardwood? To me, a lot of that answer has to do with what kind of soil or what kind of water you have. And that comes down to your pH, which is basically the pH of the soil. Roses like neutral, 6.0, 6.5, something like that. Here in the upstate of South Carolina, my soil tends to be acidic. So I'm not going to use pine. It's acidic. I'm going to use hardwood. If I lived in an area where the soil was more alkaline, maybe up above 7, 7.5, then I might use pine in order to bring it down a little bit. Talk to your independent garden center. They'll be able to help you with something like that. Second thing you hear about mulch all the time is fresh mulch robs nutrients from the soil as it breaks down. To some degree that's true because that's what it does to break down. It needs nitrogen. And it's going to pull it from 2 directions. It's going to pull it from the air and it's going to pull it from the dirt underneath. So it could potentially rob my roses of some nitrogen. Here's a tip. This is what I do. I make sure that my layer between this mulch, which is fresh, and the bare soil underneath, there's a layer of well-rotted compost. Because what happens when all of this stuff breaks down, compost breaks down, it then releases nitrogen in the other direction. It reverses. It takes nitrogen and releases it back into the air and back into the soil. So, if I have my hardwood mulch here, and then I have a layer of compost here on top of my soil, which is here, this layer of compost is working in 2 directions. It's putting nitrogen into the soil, helps feed my roses, and it's taking nitrogen and sending it back up into my mulch and helping break down my mulch. So I use that fresh layer of compost as a kickstarter in order to get it going. That's also why I recommend you never ever take the old mulch out because it is now broken down. So by putting the new layer on top next year, then that whole cycle begins again, and then you have your nitrogen-producing mulch with your fresh mulch on top. That's why you never want to clean it out. Now, I've got a really nifty composter I want to show you, though. This is my composter. It's a good boy. This is Fozzie. He works 24/7, 365 days a year, and I get some of the best living compost you can ever find. Now he's a big boy, and I know some of you probably have smaller gardens. And for you folks who have smaller gardens, well, we also have a compact model. You probably think your roses need a whole lot more water in the summer because it's hot outside. Not necessarily true. Remember I've been talking a little bit about how roses go kind of dormant, semi-dormant in the summertime? They actually use less water, okay? They need most of their water really in the spring when they're pushing new growth and new blooms, and then again they're going to need water in the fall because again they're pushing out some new blooms and they're getting ready for winter. But in the summertime, you actually find that you probably will back off on your watering a little bit. Now how often should you water in the summer? I can't really give you that answer because I don't know where you live or what kind of soil you have. That's really what's going to do it. So you're going to have to trust your gardener's instincts on this. But let me give you a little test that you can use to kind of get an idea of how long you can go between waterings. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to go out and flood your roses. Water them deeply. Garden hose, bubblers, drips, whatever you normally use to do your irrigation. Then go ahead and mark that day on the calendar so you know when you did it, and then stop watering. Watch the roses, okay? When they start to droop a little bit, you've waited one day too long between waterings. That's going to give you an idea. So if you watered it the 1st of July and they started to droop the 15th of July, you know you can go almost 2 weeks between waterings. And then what you want to do when you water again is flood them again. Why? Because you want to push those roots deep. You don't want to keep them. You want to make them go look for water. And by getting that water deep, that's exactly what's going to happen. You will actually find the time between waterings will probably increase as the roots go deeper. Okay? Now the second tip I can give you about watering is absolutely make sure you keep the gardener hydrated as well, because that's important when you're out working in the heat. Last thing I want to talk about is leaf drop. What is that? You see leaves turning yellow, you see less leaves on the plant in the summertime. It's normal. It's hot outside. A lot of plants lose some water through their leaves, so they shed some of their leaves because less foliage, less water loss. It's a conservation measure. You see it during a drought too, by the way. The roses will almost be completely defoliated, but they're still alive. They're conserving themselves is basically what they're doing. So that's some summer chores you can go ahead and do. Back off on the feeding a little bit, check your mulch, continue to spray or not spray, depending on what you prefer to do. And the watering, try to see how long you can go between watering. Let's try to push those roots deep. That's a long-term health thing. So once you've done your cleanup on your rose plants themselves, there's a few more summer chores now for you to take care of, and that'll get the best out of your roses come fall.